Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Fix Double Game Week 26 live stream. My name is FPL Nacho, and we have got a lot to talk about in this live stream because, of course, there has been an announcement for the Double Game Weeks 28 and 29. So, of course, we're going to be touching on that. So, it is a lot to cover in this live stream, guys. So if you want to support the live stream, please do drop a like and hit that subscribe button. And as always, this is going to be a brilliant opportunity for you guys to drop any questions that you have in the chat, and I'll be sure to cover them throughout the video. And as always, I'll be opening up the floor at the end of the live stream for a Q&A where we can discuss a lot of those questions in detail. Now, while there has been a double game week 28 and 29 announced, we need to remember that we still have two important game weeks prior to those 28 and 29. So we really want to be focusing this live stream on game weeks 26 and 27 because I know a lot of managers are probably going to be looking too far beyond this. And I think we need to really focus ourselves back on the task in hand, which is double game week 26. So in this live stream, we're going to be covering the usual things. We're going to be looking at fixtures, of course. We're looking at the predicted points for players in the next two game weeks. And then we'll be looking at some of the hot topics like the Jota replacements. I know a lot of people right now are sat there on Jota, talking the best defenders, midfielders and forwards to own. And then, of course, we're going to be touching on some of those fixtures as well that are coming up, discussing some of the announcements and how they could shape your chip strategy going forward. So I can see there's a lot of people in the chat right now. Aaron, hope you're doing well. Anderson Sim, hope you are doing well. All the way from Malaysia. Wow. Let me know what time difference that is there. I'd be interested to know. Obviously, that might be difficult with the deadlines. Mohammed, hope you're doing well, buddy. Cooper, hope you're doing well. And we already got some questions in the chat, so that's really good to see. So I'm looking forward to answering those throughout this live stream. So as I mentioned, guys, we do have the game week 28 and 29 announcement, but I really do want to focus this live stream more on the task in hand, which is game week 26 and 27. So, without further ado, guys, let's touch in on the Fantasy Football Fix fixture analyzer for the next two game weeks. I'm going to be specifically looking at those in hand right now. Then we'll be looking at a bit more of a macro view. We'll have a look at the fixture analyzer for the next 4 game weeks, maybe even the next 5, to get an idea on how they fall. Now, it's worth noting, guys, because the announcement was literally like half an hour or so ago, Fantasy Football Fix website hasn't updated yet. As you can expect, there's a lot of information for us to process. That will be updated in due course, I can guarantee that. But for now, what we probably will do is just use the Fantasy Football, Fantasy Premier League's official site just to show you guys the fixtures that are coming up. But don't worry about it. We're going to be having plenty of live streams between now and game week 28 where we're going to have all of our information completely up to date and importantly get those projected points updated so we can accurately look at what is going to be happening from game weeks 28 onwards. But it's worth noting game week 26 and 27 is all completely related. We still have all the projected points there for you guys, which is going to be really important to deep dive into to see who are the best players to own over the next 2 game weeks at least. So firstly, I've got the fixtures based on the next 2 game weeks coming up. And we can see that the Burnley, we know already have that double in 26 and 27. Now, again, I think because a lot of people's attentions are being drawn to game weeks 28 and 29, we're probably looking already beyond Burnley assets, thinking that the fixtures, in particular 26, aren't necessarily the most attractive options. But I'll still argue that game week 27 is a fixture that we could definitely target for some of those defensive and attacking assets with Crystal Palace and Leicester at home. In particular, that Leicester defence that are really struggling right now in the league. So I think Burnley still on the radar for sure. Now, we know that Liverpool have a double game week announced later on in game week 29, I believe. But the game week 26 double game week still remains one of the best double game week announcements that they have done so far, including today's announcement. So the triple captain on Mo Salah should still be on everybody's mind. But just be cautious on those triple ups on Liverpool. The blank game week 27 that they do have means that you could be sat there with a bench full of Liverpool players on top of the likes of Arsenal assets that we know are blanking in game week 27. So popular strategy might be to play that free hit in game week 27 to compensate for the investment that a lot of managers are going to be doing on Arsenal and Liverpool assets. Now, outside of those two teams, I'm just going to filter it by game week 26 in isolation so we can get a real idea on the best fixtures for these teams. And you can see that the bloody Watford, are still appearing on our screens as a potential options for us. Now, obviously, a lot of managers right now have been burnt by the likes of Dennis and still own the likes of Josh King. And looking at the fixtures coming up with Villa away and Crystal Palace at home, Man United away in game week 27, I'd still argue that holding these Watford assets is still worthwhile in the longer term. So if you are currently sat there with the Dennises, with the Kings, and we know they've got a double game week announced in 28 where they play at home to Arsenal and away to Wolves, albeit not the best fixtures, still an argument to hold those Watford assets right now. After that, we know Arsenal are the team to target right now with their double game week in 26 and their newly announced double game week in 29 at home to Leicester and at home to Liverpool. And importantly, we know that they play in game week 30. They are going to be one of the teams that a lot of managers are going to be piling into. And I would really recommend you guys focusing your transfers on Arsenal players in particular. But again, be cautious of that blank game week in 27. Outside of that, guys, Wolves, we know, are going to be top of the agenda as well because they have got a double game week in 28 that's been dropped in. And that fixture is, Crystal Palace at home and Watford at home. Now, I wasn't massively huge on the double game week 26 announcement for Wolves, where, as you can see, they have Leicester at home and Arsenal away. And game week 27 away to West Ham isn't necessarily the best on paper. But when we look at that double game week for 28 with Crystal Palace at home and Watford at home, Jimenez was an asset that I really wasn't considering for the coming game weeks based on the fixtures that they had already announced. But with that double game week in 28, I really do think that Raul Jimenez is now really coming into the conversation as one of the top forwards to own over the next 4 to 5 game weeks. So he is definitely going to be climbing a lot of people's lists right now as the go-to forward. And I think with that double game week 28 announcement, that is something that we really are going to be focusing on. Another team, guys, I just want to quickly touch on is going to be Leeds. Another team that has been slightly skewed now because of their double game week announcement in 28. You can see that on our fixture analyzer. Leeds have Man United at home and Liverpool away. Awful double game week for Leeds assets. And the big thing about Leeds right now is that there are hardly any assets you want to target. The only one that I would recommend managers even considering is going to be Rafinha. And we know that there has been a few question marks over him. A lot of rumours hovering about contracts, talks stalling. Maybe something going on behind the scenes there. And their fixture at home to Tottenham as well, not looking the best in game week 27. However, with their double game week announcement in 28, away to Leicester and at home to Aston Villa, that now makes the fixtures for Leeds being double in 26, Tottenham in 27, and then a double in 28. So definitely someone like Rafinha, if you're sat there maybe with someone like Jota and you're not interested in someone like the Arsenal assets, I think Rafinha could be a really nice sideways move into somebody who's a little bit cheaper than Jota to free up some funds in your squad. But again, going to be touching a lot more in detail with these midfield replacements for Jota a little bit later on. So don't worry about that, guys. We will be covering that in plenty of detail. Just want to quickly see some of the chat in here. Ice Cold Jones, what a name. Do I replace Jota for Brownhill or Broja? Well, of course, Jota being a midfielder in the game, a direct replacement for Jota to Broja isn't necessarily something that we can be considering right now. You would have to be selling someone in that front line to be able to make that justified move. Brownhill, really somebody I wouldn't be necessarily considering, but Broja, someone who we're going to be touching on a little bit, definitely someone that would be on my radar for sure. And we got DNC Never saying, will Firmino take Jota's role on the field? Well, we knew that Jota was competing for minutes alongside Firmino. I think Salah's got that right side locked in now with Jota's absence in game week 26, almost confirmed with him being in a boot. So I do think right now that Firmino is becoming an asset that we could consider. Would I consider him personally? Probably not. I think it's a bit too much money invested for a player that blanks in game week 27. And when you have the likes of Jimenez, who has now got double game week, a single game week, and a double game week, I think your money could be used elsewhere. And Jimenez is the first player that's coming to my mind on that scenario. Rio saying, hello Nacho, will I bench Cancelo or play him over Dennis or Mahrez or Edouard? Well, I absolutely hate the idea of benching a premium asset, in particular someone like Cancelo. We know that his FPL ceiling is massive, attacking potential, and we know Man City are one of the best defensive teams in the league. I'd argue the best defensive team in the league. So right now, if it's a competition between Cancelo and Dennis, Cancelo wins that debate every day of the week for me. And the same goes for Cancelo versus Edouard. I think the only one that really comes up as a comparison is going to be Cancelo versus Mahrez. Now, with the injuries to Man City's front line for the likes of Jack Grealish and the form that Mahrez is in, I really think that Mahrez is somebody that we should have our eyes on, in particular those that are maybe free hitting in the next few game weeks. So Mahrez versus Cancelo is super close, and something that when we come into the projected points over the next 2 game weeks, we can deep dive into that and see what the answer is there. But on a personal opinion, I like the idea of the Mahrez FPL ceiling. I just think Cancelo is a bit more of a safer pick for you because you're getting ownership in that Man City defence that you know a lot of managers might have already. Right, guys. And Zod, I hope you're doing well. And Torji, apologies if I pronounced that wrong. Hope you're doing well all the way from Norway. Great to see so many international people tuning in. It's great to see. And for those that are in the UK, hope you are doing well with the storm that's going on right now. FPL throwing storms and also the storms going on outside. Bit of carnage right now in the world of FPL. So we've quickly covered the guaranteed fixtures for the next 2 game weeks. And again, guys, I really urge you not to look beyond these next 2 game weeks. Like, a lot of managers kind of get caught up in the longer term. You need to play what's in front of you first and foremost. But we do need to start planning our chips in effect. So, as I mentioned, Fantasy Football Fix site hasn't been updated with the new fixtures just yet. Again, totally understandable because it's only been announced so shortly ago and they are going to be updated super quick. But I am just going to bring up the Premier League fixtures FDR ticker here just for us to quickly look at those fixtures that we touched on in game weeks 28 and 29, just so you guys know concrete who have the doubles, and then we can move on from that. So as you can see on the screen here, I've got the teams, and you can see in game week 28's column there, the third one along. First and foremost, Aston Villa have a double game week at home to Southampton and away to Leeds. Then the next team in that column is Leeds that have a double game week away to Leicester and home to Aston Villa. And again, as I mentioned, Rafinha, not really on a lot of people's radar, but with that double game week, I think that puts him into the equation now as a viable option for those teams. Now, next up is going to be Newcastle, who have a double game week in 28, and they have Brighton at home and Southampton away. Now, again, Newcastle assets-wise, from a defensive perspective, I don't really think, now that Trippier is ruled out, have many assets that I think I could recommend to you guys. And the same goes for midfielders. However, St. Maximin could be someone that is back on the menu. We know that this guy is absolutely electric when he is on it. And with the fixtures coming up, West Ham away in game week 26, Brentford away in 27, then the double in 28, and just previewing game week 29, you can see another double game week for them, away to Chelsea and away to Everton. I think St. Maximin's somebody that is going to go completely under the radar, and maybe someone we need to talk about a little bit more in the conversation. Now, one of the players that I really think completely blows St. Maximin out of the water is going to be Southampton's Broja. And they're a team that do have a double game week in game week 28, away to Villa and home to Newcastle. 2 really, really good fixtures for Southampton. And that is just slotted in the middle of a really great fixture run. You can see there, Everton at home, Norwich at home, then the double, then Watford at home, Burnley away and Leeds away. These are brilliant fixtures for Southampton assets. And while I don't necessarily trust them from a defensive perspective, Broja is someone who's emerged who looks like a great value pick. Cheaper than the Watford forwards like King and Dennis, so a really easy move to make to this Southampton forward in Broja. And I really think with that double game week in 28, he is going to be even more tempting as an asset. Now, I touched on Watford, guys, and these guys continue to find an excuse to stay in our teams. You can see game week 28, we have Arsenal at home and Wolves away as their double game week. Now, their game week in 26 double, away to Villa and home to Crystal Palace. While it isn't necessarily the worst fixtures, I'd argue they're okay. And I think a reason to hold them players is justified in this game week. However, after that, Man United away and then a double of Arsenal and Wolves, I think personally is the right time to then move away from them. And if you're not tempted by someone like Broja at Southampton for this particular game week in isolation, I think an easy move of Dennis/King to Broja in game week 27, if you're not free hitting, is such an easy move to make. It's going to give you a really great double in game week 28 and a player that is in form and looking great value in FPL. So I think that's a really easy move to make for managers. Now, the last team doubling in game week 28 is going to be Wolves, who have Crystal Palace at home and Watford at home. And this is where I'd argue the best double game week that has been announced for game week 28. Now, I was a little bit hesitant on the double game week in 26 at home to Leicester and away to Arsenal. I think defensively, it's a viable fixtures for them in this game week coming up. I think Saiss, Cody, probably not ignoring now because of the potential rotation, are definitely worth considerations. And then Jimenez, haven't been a big fan of him recently. I think he's not worth the money that we'll be investing. But now game week 28 has thrown this spanner in the works. I think that puts Jimenez right back on the menu. And I really do think that a game week 28 investment in the front line of someone like Jimenez and Broja should be right up on that priority for managers going forward. So Jimenez definitely back on the radar. Now, that was game week 28. Let's quickly touch on game week 29 just so we can completely run through the fixture announcements that we got. Because again, I want to come back to game week 26 in isolation, guys. So, Arsenal. We know that they got a double in 26, which is brilliant. Blank in game week 27, but then a great fixture away to Watford. And now this double announcement in 29. At home to Leicester and at home to Liverpool. Now, I wouldn't say that this is necessarily the best fixture announcement for Arsenal. However, having two home fixtures is really, really tempting from a defensive perspective. I think a lot of managers right now already know that they're going to be doubling down on Arsenal assets because with two doubles coming up and great fixtures either side of the doubles, I think going triple up on Arsenal is a really viable option if you have a strategy in mind for navigating the blank game week 27. So I think a combination of Ramsdale, Tierney/Ben White and Saka in midfield is a brilliant triple up to own over the next 6 game weeks, I would argue. And I would even throw maybe Lacazette into the conversation as a forward option. But Arsenal, with that double game week, shouldn't put off any managers. I think if anything, it's justified the reasoning for investing in Arsenal assets. And we know in particular that game week 30 could be a big blank for teams because of cup competitions. And Arsenal are one of the teams that are guaranteed to play in game week 30. So Arsenal kind of tick all the boxes along the way here for them. Now, the next game week announcement in 29 for the double is going to be Brighton. But again, not the best fixtures that have been announced. At home to Liverpool and Spurs. So really, I think we're in a situation right now with Brighton where if you own the likes of Sanchez in goal, I think it's worthwhile holding on to him if you don't want to move away to the likes of Sarr at Wolves or Ramsdale at Arsenal. But I don't think I'll necessarily invest in Brighton as a team going forward. Next up, Everton. A double game week of Wolves at home and Newcastle away, which is looking really good on paper. Now again, Wolves is going to be very, very tricky, but the investment in Everton assets is probably only going to come in game week 29. With Man City at home in 27 and Tottenham away in 28, I think that you really can't invest in Everton until game week 29 in isolation. So hold off on those transfers for Everton assets right now as we speak. Now, the last few that have been announced for game week 29, Liverpool, double game week in 29, away to Brighton and away to Arsenal. Tricky fixtures for Liverpool, and it just completely makes it concrete that the double game week in 26 is by far the best double game week for triple captaining a premium asset like Mo Salah. But still, what it does mean is that investing in a triple up on Liverpool looks like a great strategy because of the double in 26 and the decent fixtures after their blank in 27. Last few, Newcastle have, as I mentioned, a double game week. So they go double game week 28, double game week 29. Think there's investment worthwhile potentially in someone like St. Maximin, but I have touched on that. And last up is going to be Tottenham. double game week, away to Man United and away to Brighton. So these are really tricky doubles for Spurs. Game week 26, the one coming up, we know they have Man City away and Burnley away. I'd argue they are mixed fixtures there for them. But then Leeds away and Everton at home, brilliant game weeks for them in isolation, followed by a tricky double. If you're looking to invest in Spurs defensively, I would probably hold off on that for sure. I would avoid them right now. From an offensive perspective, I still think Son and Kane should be on the menu. I think Son in particular in that midfield slot is somebody that I would be considering to own, as he just is going to tick along really nicely over this period, and I think he's a great premium asset to own. So I think personally Son is still right up there. Harry Kane on the other hand, I think with Jimenez, with the likes of Lacazette potentially, and even Broja, I think there's cheaper options available with better fixtures in mind. But let me know in the chat, guys, what your thoughts are on the rundown on those fixtures there. I'm just going to pop back up our fixture analyzer for the next 2 game weeks. I'm going to quickly dip into the comment section, see what you guys are up to. Hopefully that's given you a bit of a rundown on the fixtures coming up. And if you didn't know about them, you know about them now. So we've got, is it Nuisance BS saying, on a free hit for game week 26, would you have Robertson, Jimenez and Saiss? I already have Sarr in goal, or Weghorst, Van Dijk and Zaha. For this game week in isolation, I probably would go for the combination of Robertson, Jimenez and Saiss. I think that's probably the investment that I would go for. I think Weghorst is a good investment, but in particular for game week 27, I think they got tricky games for game week 26. Abu Dav saying, Jota out, Mane in, or will he be benched during the double game week, you reckon? Well, I think Mane is a very interesting call. I think I wouldn't go for the double up of Salah and Mane personally. I think rotation is going to be a little bit in that front line for Liverpool. Not as much, of course, now that Jota's ruled out. But I think there is going to be minutes managed for all those players. I think I'd much prefer go to someone like Son at Spurs and cover yourself across different fixtures and games in particular. So I think Son is a better pick there. Rio saying I have both Cornet and Weghorst now. Don't mind that at all. Would just say about Cornet, obviously a little bit of an injury risk from time to time, so just be cautious on that one. Cooper saying, should I transfer in Sarr or Ramsdale? Well, we know that in regards to the fixtures coming up, Arsenal do blank in game week 27. So if you're looking in isolation as a goalkeeper who can play every game, I would go for Sarr, Jose Sarr at Wolves. But I personally think the double game week that Arsenal have in this game week is probably the better one. So it depends on kind of what strategy you're going for. If you have a goalkeeper that can rotate with Ramsdale, then I'll probably go for Ramsdale and then the cheaper budget option alongside him. Ragaf saying, Watkins plus Foden plus Gray to Son, Rafinha, Jimenez for a -12. Right, so not a big fan of selling Foden at all. However, because of the double game weeks that have been announced, and we know Man City are not included in that, although Man City are by far and away the best team in the league, I think the added games that teams have kind of put them at a level playing field, if not better than Man City's fixtures coming up. So in regards to those transfers, I am probably all for them. I think Watkins is a rotation risk now, not necessarily clicking under Steven Gerrard, and I think Ings waiting in the wings is an easy swap over for him for maybe 1 or 2 games. I think you're going to get guaranteed game time in the 3 you're bringing in. And what you are doing is justifying yourself because there's doubles in the distance for those players. So I don't mind that at all. FPL Phillips, hope you're doing well. Aaron's there, thoughts on JWP in for Jota for next week. Not free hitting in 27. Don't mind Ward-Prowse at all. Obviously set piece king, delivery merchant. But I would probably have more priority on the likes of Saka's. And this is a great actual... what's it called, guys? Segue for our next section. And that is going to be looking at Jota replacements. Now, guys, as always, you guys love this. I've left the 5th spot open on our Fantasy Football Fix comparison matrix. Again, guys, be sure to check out our premium tools over on Fantasy Football Fix. You can sign up and check them all out. They're really, really helpful. So I've lined up some replacements for Jota. And I've got Saka, Cornet, Rafinha and Ramsey of Aston Villa. Now, you'll notice I haven't put Salah or Son into the equation because I personally think that they are not necessarily in the conversation because they're such more of an investment they kind of fall into their own bracket in themselves. And of course, if you don't have Salah, that is the priority move right now. And I think Son is probably not necessarily a priority, but going to be a longer term investment for you. That is a proven asset. So I want to keep this in more of the budget range that we're in right now. So let me know in the comments, guys, who do you want as the 5th player included in this to compare against these 4? I'm going to give you guys 30 seconds, drop it in the chat, and then I can update this, and then we can go from there. So please do update in the comments, guys. I'm just going to quickly answer some more questions while you're letting me know who you want. Athava's saying Weghorst or Jimenez. I think Jimenez is now the better pick, but if you don't have the money available, Weghorst is obviously a nice move, but I think Jimenez is now the go-to guy. Aaron Smith saying, I need to replace Jota for the next 2 game weeks. I could replace him with either a midfielder or a forward. Hopefully this section is going to help you out, Aaron. Obviously, we're going to be coming into that now. So guys, there's a lot of chat here. So we've got a lot of Zaha's, Coutinho's, FPL Phillips saying Zaha or Coutinho covering the both. So I've kept, what I've done here is I've kept Ramsey in the equation, just because I think that at his price point right now and what he offers in the Aston Villa side, I probably would favour Jacob Ramsey to then invest the additional funds to upgrade the rest of the squad. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put Zaha into the equation, and then what we can do is replace Ramsey or replace Rafinha with Coutinho to get a side-by-side on Ramsey alongside one another. So let's bring in Zaha, obviously a FPL favourite or absolute villain for some managers out there. I know that he's someone that has burnt me in the past. Now, worth mentioning right now, guys, you can see the projected points below the names of the players. I want you to kind of not look at those right now because we are updating all of our algorithms as we speak. These kind of projections are skewed a little bit. They don't include the likes of Arsenal's newly announced double game week and Rafinha's double game week. So I want you to just kind of draw a line in the projected points there because they're not accurate as we speak. That's looking over the next 5 game weeks. But what we want to look into here is the underlying stats for these players. Now, price point wise, they're all pretty much the same price apart from Jacob Ramsey. That is obviously at 4.8 million. So it's going to be really interesting to see what these underlying stats look like because we could pick up a gem in Jacob Ramsey over the coming game weeks who has obviously a lot cheaper in regards to his price point. Now, Saka leading the way for FPL points on 99. Rafinha, the only one who's closest, on 95. Now, again, it's worth mentioning the likes of Cornet has played a lot less minutes than some of these players, and the great thing about our Fantasy Football Fix comparison matrix is that we can change it to average per game. So this is something that I'm going to do right now just so we can get Cornet into the equation a bit more, and then I can bring it back to the show total section. So as you can see there, that's now changed it to an average per game. Saka still leading the way on 4.5, but now Cornet back in the equation on 4.4, and you can see there Rafinha alongside Saka on 4.5 points per game. So a really nice threshold for players that are hovering around the 6 million bracket. Now goals, this is where Cornet is leading the way on 0.5, but again, because the data size is a lot smaller, I don't necessarily want to judge this in comparison to Saka necessarily. I'm much more impressed with Saka playing double the minutes to have a 0.3 per game goals than Cornet's 0.5, and it's worth noting that as well. But I think it's still worth talking about Cornet's attacking potential in this Burnley team. FPL assist-wise, Saka showing how much of a well-rounded asset he is on 0.2 per game. The others not really offering too much. Zaha on 0.1, Rafinha on 0.1, but none for the likes of Ramsey or Cornet. Shots-wise, this is where Rafinha really does come to his own sort of bracket, really. 2.9 shots per game. The only one who gets anywhere near that is Saka on 2.1. I think the shot volume of Ramsey is probably a little bit worrying for me. Only 1 shot per game on average over 1,433 minutes. Now, we know with Ramsey, very much one of those that's a ball carrier or third man runner from the midfield. So he's not necessarily going to be dominating the game and having shots all the time. He's very much pot shots and obviously getting into the box at last minute with his third man runs. So I think the shot volume for me is a little bit of a worry for someone like Jacob Ramsey at only 1 shot per game. Big chances created again. There's no surprises that Saka and Rafinha are leading the way here. Some of the best assets available at that price point. But FPL bonus points, something that I always like to look at because some players are absolute bonus magnets. It's crazy to think that the best asset in the game in Mo Salah is the complete opposite in regards to bonus point magnet. Rafinha, 0.5 per game. Now, when you're comparing that to somebody like Zaha, as we mentioned, on 0.2, so that could almost tilt it in your favour a little bit. And if you're gaining those little points as we go on for the back end of the season, that's really could be the difference between you finishing in the top 10k or not. So when we're looking at players, now that Leeds have the double game week in game week 28, I think Rafinha over Zaha right now. I think that is pretty concrete based on these underlying stats. The only thing I would say about Rafinha is, of course, a little bit of rumours about his contract issues. Could that affect him from a minutes and kind of mind state perspective? That could be the issue there right now. But I think it's clear that with the double game weeks for Arsenal in game weeks 26 and in game week 29, and that really favourable fixture against Watford, I think Saka is the standout option if you don't have a Jota replacement in mind right now. If you can navigate game week 27 with a free hit or just a stronger bench, Saka, I think, over the course of the next 6 game weeks, I would not be surprised if he's the highest scoring midfielder out of these 5. Now, I'm just going to quickly replace Zaha because personally, let me know in the chat, guys, I think I would go Rafinha over Zaha. But if I chuck Coutinho into the mix as a comparison for Ramsey versus Coutinho, now again, very small sample size for Coutinho. So we are going to be comparing one another based on averages per game. But again, I like to judge players based on larger sample size. So while Coutinho right now is looking brilliant at 6.8 points per game, 0.5 goals per game, and 0.5 FPL assists per game, I personally can't make a really informed judgment on Coutinho based on the small sample size. So it is worth noting that. But if he can maintain this sort of form, then this is really, really interesting sort of readings, because I think he could be a brilliant FPL option with their fixtures coming up. And we know that great double in game week 28 with Southampton and Leeds away. So let me know in the chat, guys, who is your preference as a Jota replacement? Of course, Son and Salah are brilliant picks, but it is worth mentioning that they are completely in a league of their own in regards to being proven assets and their price points as well. I want to consider players that everybody can afford when they have investments in Diego Jota. So let me know, guys, in the chat what route you would go down. Let's quickly cover some of the questions in the chat. Morris is saying, on a wildcard, Mane or Firmino? I'd probably rather go Mane, and then you can have an easy switch to somebody like Son if you want to target them doubles later down the line. Rio saying the Saints striker, Broja or Adams or Armstrong? Absolutely Broja as the Southampton forward. He is by far head and shoulders above all other players in that price point and way better than any other Southampton forward. Gary Tan saying, what do you think of Podence for Jota or Cornet for Jota? Well, covered some of them Jota replacements. Gary, while I'm on here, I will quickly drop in Podence as a consideration. I'll get rid of Jacob Ramsey right now because you can then look alongside Cornet versus Podence as a consideration for your team. Now, Podence, somebody who has come back into the Wolves side, starting to slowly benefit, but in regards to underlying stats from an attacking perspective, not necessarily doing enough for me to consider him as a player. Now, Cornet and Podence both played pretty much identical minutes, and you can see that the FPL points, the goals, the shots are all in Cornet's favour. Really, really kind of nothing inspiring for the underlying stats for Podence, as you can see here. And while they do have great doubles coming up, in particular in game week 28, I think Jimenez is just the go-to guy in that double game week 28. Podence right now just not doing enough to justify investing in him as we speak. That's not to say later down the line, if we get a bit more information and game time from him, could emerge as a great option in fantasy. But for me right now, not a consideration in the game as we speak. Uma saying, will Aït-Nouri play? Do think that he is a really good option, but we've seen that Marcel does play in certain games, and it's worth noting that Johnny has returned from injury, and we know that he is obviously a proven Premier League player. He could easily come back into the fold, so I think Aït-Nouri right now isn't a consideration in the game as we speak. I think this is a really good opportunity for us to look at defenders. Now, as I mentioned, the likes of Wolves and Arsenal should be on everybody's radar as we speak because of the double game weeks that they have coming up and because they definitely feature in game week 30 with the potential blanks that could happen. I think the investment in their defenders is going to be crucial over the next 5 to 6 game weeks. Now, I think a lot of managers right now probably do have investment in somebody like Aaron Ramsdale at Arsenal, and a lot of question marks right now about whether to double up on Arsenal. And I think there is definitely a justified reasoning to do that. I think with their fixtures coming up, in particular game week 26, I like the double up of Tierney or White and Ramsdale, because the attacking areas with the red card to Martinelli, the likes of Odegaard, of course, someone like Partey, not really offering FPL value. The only other route you could go down from an offensive perspective is Lacazette. But I know a lot of managers right now are not necessarily on the Lacazette train. So going for the double up in Arsenal defence could be a really viable move. So what I've done here is put, again, the fixed comparison matrix with Arsenal defenders Tierney and White, and Wolves' Saiss and Cody. Again, I've left the 5th box open for you guys. Drop me in the comments. I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. Let me know some names that you want into the equation. I can put them in as a comparison. And again, if there's loads of popular names, then I can replace them along the way just to get an idea on what you guys want. So drop it in the chat, guys. 30 seconds, and then obviously I will get them included in the comparison that we have right now. And again, guys, if you are enjoying the stream, please do drop it a like, and let me know obviously any transfers or strategies that you have planned now that the double game weeks in 28 and 29 have been announced. But I'll give you guys another 15 seconds or so. Drop any questions, any players you want in the comparison matrix, and I'll put them in on that 5th spot. And let me know as well, guys, are there any Arsenal or Wolves players that you are considering that is slightly outside of the current thought process, with obviously Tierney, White, and a lot of those players getting the kind of plaudits that a lot of the community are going for right now? So Victor saying Semedo. I see Jonathan saying about Digne. Gary saying about Kilman. So I think the popular trend right now is probably just going to be a different variation of Wolves or Arsenal defenders. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to chuck in Semedo as an option. What we can do then is then filter down to what we think is the best Wolves asset for you guys to consider. And then we can also filter down what we think is the best Arsenal defensive pick for you guys to go for. So first and foremost, let's take a look at Semedo in comparison to the other two. Now, it's worth mentioning as well, with Aït-Nouri obviously getting game time, I do think that with the introduction to Marcel and also Johnny, I'm going to take Aït-Nouri out of the equation unless you guys really think that he's going to get guaranteed game time. So first and foremost, let's have a look at these players in isolation. You can see that the projected points I want to rule out right now, guys, because again, these are not including the double game weeks that have been announced for Wolves. So they're not completely accurate, but you can still see there that the projected points are still really high for them. And that's not even including the double game week that they have announced in 28. So you can only imagine that those projected points are just going to be exceeded once we update our algorithm. So points-wise, super close between the three. 88 for Saiss, 96 for Cody, 81 for Semedo. But it's the goals where I really think could be the difference between going for the right and wrong Wolves asset. Semedo, 0 goals right now, which is quite surprising for him being an offensive wing-back in that system. But Saiss and Cody in particular, because we know he got no goals in the Premier League for a very long time and now is cropped up with 2 in the league right now. Saiss, on the other hand, somebody who does like to get a goal from time to time for sure. FPL assists-wise, as you can expect, a wing-back leading the race there on 1. Clean sheets, you can see that again, Semedo playing a little bit less minutes than them, but Saiss and Cody being pretty consistent with their clean sheets in the team. And FPL bonus points, 6 for Saiss and Cody, 7 for Semedo. So at their price point right now, Saiss at 5 million is the more expensive of the 3 to invest in. But I probably would argue that Saiss is the man that I would consider of the 3. Now, Cody, yes, of course, has the same amount of goals as Saiss, but we know from years gone by and from the underlying stats that Saiss is the bigger threat from corners. I think at 0.3 million, if you do have the budget available and you're not so tight, I think Saiss is going to be the go-to guy. At 4.8 million with Semedo, I think he does offer a really nice option at right wing back, but With Johnny back in the equation, does that mean his minutes could potentially get rotated? That could be something that could happen down the line. So let me know in the chat, guys. Who is your preferable Wolves pick? I think Saiss is a really nice pickup. Now, I saw a few people mention Kilman. I'm just going to chuck Max Kilman into the equation as well, because I think this is somebody who I would probably pick over Semedo as well. 4.6 million. Obviously, getting really good game time, played even more minutes than Cody, which is really surprising to see. 1 goal, 1 FPL assist. I'd argue that Kilman is the better of the two between Kilman and Cody. And then Saiss is probably that little bit better than Kilman. But I really do think that if the budget isn't there for Saiss, Kilman is a really nice pick alongside. And I think as well, at that price point, I think his minutes are pretty guaranteed right now from what I've heard from Wolves assets. So, Wolves correspondence. So I think Kilman's definitely somebody in the equation. So let me know in the chat, guys, who's your favourite Wolves asset? Let's quickly compare the Arsenal assets. Then I'll chuck in some of the more considerations that you guys have put in. And then we can get an idea on the best player for defensive teams going forward. So I've put in Tierney and White. Same principle. Let's chuck in as well, just on top, Tomiyasu. Obviously, the right back there. I believe that he is going to be back from injury if he isn't already. And we're also going to put Gabriel in the equation because, of course, now he is alongside Ben White as their starting centre-backs in the Arsenal team. And players that have really gone under the radar this season and strengthened Arsenal from a defensive perspective. So you can see there from an FPL points perspective, Gabriel leading the way. And that's mainly because of those 3 goals that he has picked up, proving himself to be a great offensive defender. Obviously getting a lot of these in set-piece situations. Tierney only with the 1 goal, but it is worth mentioning he has played slightly less minutes than the other defenders in this. But the FPL assists favouring Tierney. And there's no surprises there. When you do watch Arsenal from an eye test perspective, everything is very much down that left-hand side from the fullback department. Tomiyasu, on the other hand, being much more of a traditional right-back, kind of providing offensive opportunities, but Tierney really being the one that is underlapping and overlapping whoever plays on that left wing position, like Martinelli, for example. And we can see there as well, the clean sheets, Tomiyasu being heavily present, but Ben White in particular being the main man and steward in that centre-back position. But FPL bonus points going for Gabriel, no surprises with those 3 goals. So with their price points right now, White being the cheapest at 4.5 million and his minutes being the most of the 3, I think if you're just looking for sensible picks, somebody that's going to play each and every game from now until the end of the season, I think Ben White ticks that box at 4.5 million. But I do think that if you have the money available, Tierney is the guy to go to in this Arsenal defence. He's the better of the two between Tierney and Tomiyasu. And Gabriel at 0.2 million just doesn't justify going for him over Tierney, because although he has got 3 goals, I just don't think that's necessarily a sustainable rate for him. Whereas I think Tierney's FPL ceiling is going to be a lot higher. So to conclude that a minute, I personally think that the best Arsenal defender to go for is Tierney if budget isn't a choice, isn't an option. Otherwise, Ben White as a safe pick. And then for Wolves, I would go Saiss as the best Wolves option and Kilman as the budget pick if you don't have them funds available. Let me know in the chat, guys, who are your picks in regards to Arsenal and Wolves defenders. Now, I'm going to quickly chuck in some of the comparisons here that a lot of people are saying. Robertson versus Van Dijk, I think that's definitely worth a consideration. I see Skip saying Robertson there. So let's just quickly put in a comparison between Van Dijk and Robertson, because obviously right now with the strategy, oh gosh, a bit of a throwback Van Dijk picture there for sure. Andrew Robertson there. Okay, so what are a lot of managers considering Liverpool right now? Well, we know brilliant double game week in 26 with their fixtures, Norwich and Leeds. And I would expect them to potentially keep 2 clean sheets there. Now, again, we have to remember, with the Liverpool assets, they do blank in game week 27, the same as Arsenal assets. So we need to make sure you either have a chip strategy in place or a bench that can manage the situation with these Liverpool assets. But the reason a lot of managers right now are considering the likes of Van Dijk and Robertson is because of that Jota injury. Now, I'm almost certain that everybody tuning in right now probably has the double up of Trent and Salah. Let me know in the chat if you don't have that double up, because you're absolute madman. But while it was very, very beneficial for you to go 1 Liverpool defender, Salah, and then the value that Jota was providing in midfield. With the likes of Diaz's minutes being a bit risky and Mane's price point being way too expensive, and we know what Firmino's like as an FPL asset, I think now it is flipped, and I think a midfielder Salah and a double up of Liverpool defence really is the viable option going forward if you can structure your team that way. Now, we know that Robertson at 7.1 million is the slightly more expensive option, Van Dijk at 6.7, but I really do think that there is a conversation here, because naturally if you're comparing someone like Robertson, who's a flying fullback, it should probably be an easy argument here to go for Robertson, but we know that Van Dijk's present from set pieces. We know that he's going to be guaranteed game time at centre-back for Liverpool. I can almost guarantee, I'm not going to put it out there, guys, but I do think he will play most games and most minutes. Robertson, on the other hand, we have seen him share minutes with Tsimikas from time to time. Could he potentially get his minutes managed in one of the double game weeks? Maybe. And I think that's why managers are considering Van Dijk right now, because the minutes aren't really a risk with him. Now, you can see that Van Dijk leading the way for FPL points, but he has played slightly more minutes than Robertson. Obviously, he had that injury, Robertson, earlier on in the season. 2 goals for Van Dijk, 1 for Robertson, but 8 FPL assists for Robertson, only 2 for Van Dijk. That's kind of what you're expecting from Robertson there. That assist, which is a lot more than I was actually expecting to see, showing his recency in form, and the bonus points going in favour of Robertson. So again, guys, I think if money's no object and you're happy to the potential of Tsimikas sharing minutes, Robertson is the better pick of the two for sure. But if you are a little bit worried, you're a little bit more cautious FPL player, I think Van Dijk will easily do a job for you as a defender alongside Trent Alexander-Arnold. But personally, I prefer the fullback options, and I think a combination of Trent, Robertson and Salah is probably the optimal 3 in the Liverpool team. So let me know, guys, in the chat, what are your investments in regards to Liverpool? Are you going for the triple up? Are you going for a bit of a different triple up? Let me know. A few people here obviously saying about potentially minutes rested for Robertson, which definitely could happen. I see Morris is saying that on a wildcard, Mane or Firmino. If you're on a wildcard right now, I really do think that both of those players are going to be placeholders for players later down the line. I'd probably prefer Mane of the two personally. Let me know what you guys think for Morrison there. Can you help him out a little bit? I see Tom there's agreed in regards to Mane. And again, guys, if you are enjoying it, please do drop it a like. We got over 200 people tuned in, which I really do appreciate. But if we can get our likes to over 50, that would be awesome. And again, guys, I am going to be opening the floor in a bit for a Q&A session where I was going to be doing a quick fire. So let me know in the chat any questions you have. But if you can get us over 50 likes, that would be really appreciated. So, guys, we've covered the defenders. We've covered Jota replacements. We've looked at Wolves and Arsenal assets. I think the last thing I want to touch on that we've kind of pre-planned here is going to be forwards for the next few game weeks. But before we do that, I want to look at 2 things. I want to firstly look at the algorithm points. Now, as I mentioned, the algorithm hasn't been updated for the double game week 28 and 29 just because of how recent that announcement was. But doesn't mean that our algorithm isn't up to date for the next 2 game weeks. So I want to quickly show you guys what our algorithm is showing us for the next 2. So in isolation, let's have a look at game week 26. And there's no surprises right now that Liverpool are top of the charts. Salah predicted to score 18.8 points. So for those that I consider a triple captain, he's looking like a dead cert for that triple captaincy this season. Trent 14.9, Mane 14.8, and then Robertson on 12.9, Van Dijk on 10.7. So we obviously had that discussion about Robertson versus Van Dijk. I still think Robertson is the go-to option based on FPL points potential, but Van Dijk probably being the guaranteed minutes pick. There's no surprises that Liverpool are leading the way in the charts for algorithm points. When we come a little bit further down, then we see the introduction of other teams. Ramsdale, if you don't own already, is probably one of the best defensive FPL picks for this game week. We know with their double game week, really having a great season, really, Ramsdale. Arsenal, from a defensive perspective, are looking great. And we know they're playing two teams that struggle to score goals in Brentford and Wolves. So I think Ramsdale is definitely going to pick up one clean sheet at least. It just depends if he picks up that second. And if not, some clean sheet, save points along the way. Other players' considerations here, we have the Arsenal defenders in Gabriel and Ben White. But Lacazette is the one that's chucked in there that I think a lot of people are attracted to. 9.5 projected points in their double. I think that he could be a really nice pickup. But at 8.3 million, do you want to go for him over somebody like Jimenez? We're going to be looking at forwards in a minute. Outside of that, guys, you can see Saka on 8.6. So it's really tight and congested there between those players. Now, if we do look at game week 26 and 27, and we look at those in a bit more isolation, you can see that the Salah still the top guy to own, even though he does blank in game week 27. But now Pope is emerging as why he is under consideration. With the double game week 27 and 26, that puts his FPL ceiling so high. And it doesn't even mean he has to pick up any clean sheets along the way. We know that Burnley conceding shots, Pope for save points is usually pretty good. And we do know if Pope does keep a clean sheet, because of the way that they operate in the bonus point system, Pope usually does so well in the bonus point department. So he is definitely somebody that could get a monster haul if Burnley manage to pick up even one clean sheet in their 4 games that they have in the next 2 game weeks. Now again, guys, the usual names still appear over the next 2 game weeks, and it's why we are all considering them. Alexander-Arnold, Robertson's, but Ronaldo still sits there as an option. Now, let me know in the chat, guys, if you are a Ronaldo owner right now. 12.6 predicted points. Now, it's worth mentioning, Cavani been ruled out for game week 26 with their away game against Leeds. And while we thought Ronaldo might get rotated, that now kind of shows that Ronaldo is probably going to start in that game. It makes him a really tough sell for some managers. Now, of course, he's been a frustrating player. Man United don't necessarily double anytime soon. And that kind of makes it a little bit trickier in regards to holding Ronaldo, because at his price point, you could easily come down into someone like Jimenez, who has a single double game week. And when you compare the two there, there's not really any competition there. So while Ronaldo, based on our algorithm, is looking like a good player to own, I just think with those double game weeks in the longer term, it's worth selling him and investing the cash elsewhere for other players. Now, we touched on Burnley having a double-double, and I think a lot of people right now are considering their defensive options in their teams. And you can see based on our algorithm there, me and Tarkowski are basically neck and neck in regards to projected points. But with me being 0.1 cheaper, if you want to save some cash, me's probably the route to go. But I would argue that Tarkowski, from an attacking perspective, is probably the route you want to go down if you want that kind of asset. And then the likes of Rafinha, the Sons, the Mahrezes come into the equation. So I'll keep that on screen for you guys there, just to check the projected points over the next 2 game weeks, so you can see what we have in play. Okay, guys, I'm going to quickly touch on the questions here. So, where Wahid's saying, is it worth to replace Forster for Ramsdale or Sarr? I would probably argue yes, it is. I think you're going to get plenty of doubles along the way, and I think that's probably worthwhile over the longer term. Just saying, Robbo's expected points per game is better if he plays 90, but Robbo can get rotated with Shimikas, whereas Van Dijk is super nailed on. Yep, I think that's probably covered what I mentioned in there, Justin, so I'm glad you're on the same wavelength as me. Ibro saying Liverpool scored about 7 of their last 9 goals from set pieces. Robbo will miss Norwich game, in your opinion. Yep, I think there's definitely a case for Robertson getting minutes managed with Shimikas. That's something to definitely be aware of for sure. Dan Bennett, hope you're doing well, buddy. Having another great season, I see. Such a tough question. Tempted to go Robertson and just hope he plays most of it. Yes, I think that's probably the route I'm going for, Dan. If I was to buy one, I would buy Robertson with the acceptance that minutes could get rotated, but know that the FPL ceiling is probably that little bit higher with him. Jamie saying Morpay is essential. Do you guys agree? Personally, no. I don't think Morpay is essential. I think that double game week in 28 doesn't necessarily enhance him as an asset because of it being Liverpool and Spurs. I think Jimenez, Lacazette, Broja are all better options than Morpay, I think. Torgier is saying, who to take out for Salah, Ronaldo, Fernandes or Jota for a -4? Who to take out for Salah, Ronaldo? Well, I think Jota to Salah, if you can afford it, is the viable move there, because he is somebody that we know for sure isn't playing in game week 26. George 100 saying Jimenez or Weghorst, or do I keep Watkins? Okay, so Jimenez, we know, has a double game week, a single, and then a double game week. So he is definitely someone we want to consider. Weghorst, on the other hand, double, then comes into some tricky fixtures. Watkins, on the other hand, I have a sneaky suspicion he could be a rotation risk this game week because of the likes of Ings waiting in the wings. So I do think that Watkins is somebody that I would be cautious to hold. I think if you can do Watkins to Jimenez, I think that's a really valid move to make long term. Weghorst, I really do like. I think he is going to be somebody that could do well. But with the double game week this week, I think that's quite a tricky one to manage. I think Jimenez offers a little bit more over the longer term perspective. And that's a really good segue. The last one here, guys, I'm going to be dropping in is the comparison between forwards. Now, again, guys, the 5th spot is open. Please let me know in the comments who you want in the 5th spot. This is going to be the last comparison we do because I'm conscious that we've been going for close to an hour. So this is going to be the last comparison on the fixed comparison matrix for you guys to check out. Apologies, the skip. I see that you're mentioning I've missed your question. So let's have a look here. Shall I bench Jota or sell him? I think he will come good after his injury, as in my opinion, he starts over Firmino. Don't want to spend 0.5 more to get him back. No, I would personally sell Jota. Yes, I do think that he is obviously a brilliant option, but we know that he's definitely out for game week 26, and then they blank in game week 27. I'd argue that maybe even someone like Saka is going to be a better investment because I'd expect him to play 180 minutes in game week 26. Yes, he won't play in game week 27 as well, but then we know that Arsenal are geared towards a double game week in 29. So I would prefer to sell Jota, go for someone like Saka, or if you can stretch higher to someone like Son, I think that's definitely a viable option as well. Apologies for obviously not answering that one there. I obviously got caught up in the carnage here. Johnny's saying about Jimenez versus Lacazette. Hopefully this section will help you out. Dan, just seen Nacho's rank. Amazing. Thank you, mate. Yeah, obviously a little bit of luck along the way, but we will take it. Okay, so we've got a few comparisons here. I think a lot of people were saying about Harry Kane. Okay, I will chuck Harry Kane into the equation. Main reason I don't like putting someone like Harry Kane in the equation is just because of his price point. Now, obviously, Jimenez at 7.4, Lacazette 8, Weghorst at 6.5, and then Kane at 12.2. While we might see Kane come out on top in a lot of these departments, we have to remember that you're almost paying double in some cases for him as an asset. So it's just worth mentioning that in regards to Harry Kane as an option. Now, because a lot of these have played very varying minutes, what I want to do is put this as an average per game, just so we can get a fair reflection on these assets. Because as we know, Weghorst has only played 255 minutes. Compare that to the 1,700 that Kane and Jimenez have played. We can't really get an accurate representation on whether they are good assets or not. And again, as I always mention, I want to touch on Weghorst. We've only played 255 minutes. Although his underlying stats could look great, I personally don't like to make any judgments on a player based on such limited minutes. So while his stats might look good here, I think that you are always buying a player like Weghorst who's new to the Premier League at a risk, because we don't actually know whether he is up to speed with the Premier League, whether he's even fit, or whether he's even going to able to maintain the form that he's in. So that is worth mentioning as well. I much more prefer to make judgments based on players that have played a lot more minutes, as is obviously a bigger data sample to take from. So FPL points wise, Broja leading the way on 3.6 points per game. You have to remember he is the cheapest option of the bunch. Now, I would say he's played 600 minutes less than the likes of Kane and Jimenez, but at 1,100 minutes, and what I've seen from the eye test from Broja, this is somebody who is the real deal. Now, could he get rotated? Yes, he definitely could, with Che Adams, Armstrong, even Redmond waiting in the wings to potentially rotate with him. But with the fixtures coming up for Southampton, we know that they are great fixtures. And now that they have a double game week in 28, I just think Broja becomes such an easy transfer for a lot of managers to bring in. Because of his price point, I think that he offers such great value, and it means that you can invest your cash elsewhere in your squad. So I think Broja is such a simple transfer, but I appreciate that there's other great options available in fantasy. And you can see that as well. Goals leading the way on 0.3 per game. Jimenez, Lacazette and Kane all on 0.2, and it's really not appealing when you see someone like Harry Kane at its price point to have the same goals per game as Jimenez and Lacazette, who are so much cheaper. So it kind of makes me difficult to suggest Harry Kane as an option, because I feel like we're bringing him in on the assumption that he's going to regain last season's form, and we just haven't seen that right now with these underlying stats. Although it is worth mentioning, we are seeing that shot volume increase, which we always like to see with someone like Harry Kane, who is such a shot volume monster. So FPL assists, we see there that Weghorst is leading the way on 0.3, but again, such a small sample size, very difficult to come to conclusions there. We see that Lacazette on 0.2. We expect that with the position that he plays, that kind of floating number 10 forward does get involved in the play, similar to how Harry Kane does at Spurs. Shots, no surprises that Harry Kane's leading the way on 3.4. 2 per game for Jimenez, good to see, because of course he is somebody that doesn't necessarily get loads of chances in that Wolves team, and big chances created again. No surprise that Harry Kane's leading the way because of the way that he operates in that Spurs team. But based on these underlying stats and the options available, I personally think that Jimenez and Broja should be options that we all should be considering in our FPL teams. I think Weghorst has brilliant potential, but the fixtures for game week 26 are tricky. Burnley don't score many goals, and he's not necessarily proven in the league. But what I would say about him and the way that Burnley play, if he scores, likely to get big bonus points just because of the way that the BAPs work with Burnley assets. I think Jimenez is a really nice pickup because of the double and the newly double announcement in 28, and Broja because of the longer term fixtures and his price point, and he's an easy sideways move from Watford forwards in game week 27. So I really do think that they're all great options. I just think Harry Kane's hard to justify at his price point when we look at these underlying stats. I'd much prefer go for someone like Son in the midfield, just because the forwards are so crap right now this season. So guys, I see that we have got a few questions. We go for over an hour. So I've covered all we have here. The last thing I want to quickly show you and touch on is going to be the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm team, because of course we put this out every time before the deadline, and what this basically is effectively a free hit team. So this is based on all our algorithms for game week 26, and it's the best 11. So if you are currently sat there and you're potentially looking to pull a free hit this game week, this is how our free hit team would look. So you can see here, game week 26 algorithm squad. This is all up to date. Obviously, this isn't influenced by the newly announced 28 and 29 fixtures, so it's all still relevant. And you can see there that the Wolves and Arsenal defensive assets dominate the algorithm squad. Sarr in goal, back two of Tierney and Gabriel for Arsenal, and Semedo in that Wolves lineup. Now, we did have a discussion earlier about Saiss probably being the better Wolves pick, but Semedo is making it for the algorithm squad this game week. No surprises that Trent is in there, and me as a bit more of a budget pick in that Burnley double up. Midfield three of Mane and Salah, and then Rafinha to complement them in the midfield, and a front two of Jimenez and Lacazette, who we have touched on. And I do think that Lacazette, while I'm not a big fan of him long term, for this game week in isolation, I do think that he is a brilliant option just because of the way that Arsenal is set up right now with Martinelli's injury. I think Lacazette is guaranteed game time down the middle. But personally, I don't like holding Lacazette long term. I just don't think that his underlying stats from an attacking perspective are there and justified as an option. So I'm going to leave it on the screens for you guys there just to check it out. Obviously, I could hover about with other parts, but I want to just go for the last 5 minutes answering any questions that you guys have. So let me know in the chat what questions you want here. I see FPL Phillips saying, anyone else already seen the algorithm 11? Of course, FPL Phillips dropping great videos. So be sure if you haven't already to check out FPL Phillips's recent video. I believe it was dropped yesterday or this morning. Apologies, FPL Phillips, I've got that wrong. But do check it out, guys. There's great comparisons in there. Always does great videos, FPL Phillips. So be sure to check that one out. So as I said, guys, let's get the questions going for the last few minutes of this live stream. I'm going to leave the predicted points up here for you guys just to see over the next 2 game weeks. And of course, I can always filter it to particular players just so you can see in isolation who is looking the best. So, Ibro saying, with the eye test, who plays more central, higher for Southampton, Broja or Adams. Well, this is a good thing about the Fantasy Football Fix site. What I can do here quickly is put up our player heat maps, and we can quickly have a look at how Broja and Adams get on in regards to the touch heat map. So we got Adams here, Broja there, and then we can get Adams in the mix there. So here is basically the touch map for both players, and very, very similar touch heat maps. I wouldn't necessarily say one or the other is dominating in regards to down the middle or not. I think Broja getting a few more touches within the box. What we can do here, which is really good, is I can put teammates on the pitch must include. So for Broja's side, on this left-hand side, what I'm going to do is include Adams in the equation, because we know Southampton do rotate their forwards, but there has been a spell where Broja and Adams have played together as a front two. So when I put this on here, we can see the touch heat map for for Broja on the left-hand side and for Che Adams on the right. So as you can see there, when Broja plays alongside Adams, and you can see on the left touch heat map, I would argue that Broja's touches are a lot more central and a lot more in the box. Che Adams on the other side, on the right-hand side, a little bit more sporadic, his touches, hovering around the middle third and a few on the left-hand side of the box. But I don't necessarily think it's a big enough sample size for us to make huge conclusions on. But I do think that Broja is still the better pick of the two if you're looking at a player to own. Let me just put the predictions up on there for you guys. See what else we have here, guys, a minute. Gary, thanks for tuning in, buddy. Hope it helped out. Andrew, keen to see how the Watford strikers compare to Broja and Weghorst. Well, Andrew, I do think that the Watford forwards are a good hold for this particular game week, and they are still emerging as options, obviously, going forward because of their double game week announcement in 28. I just think if you can move away from Watford forwards, I think the sooner the better. I think you could hold them for game week 26, but then move into someone like Broja is probably the best pick that you can make, because Hodgson, we know, is not an expansive manager. He's going to be doing his best to keep them defensively very sound, and I think that always causes concern for assets from an attacking perspective. What about James Ward-Prowse? Like Ward-Prowse as an option, I think he will tick along really nicely for you. Whether I would consider him as an actual FPL asset, I just don't think I would. Looking at our projections here, you can see Ward-Prowse is projected to score 9.9 points over the next 2 game weeks. So game week 27 looks really good for him with 5.5 projected points. I think he's a nice pickup at 6.4 million. I just think if you can stretch to someone like Saka, I think that's definitely a better pick than Ward-Prowse as an option. Last few here, FPL Phillips already see some very handsome. Neil, are the projected points based over the season or last few game weeks? So Neil, this is basically just all the underlying stats that we have produced together, and also based on the fixtures coming up to calculate the projected points going forward. I'm sure someone could probably do a better explanation than myself on that one. I would recommend tuning into Tom's stats videos that he drops on a Wednesday. That goes into a bit more of a deep dive on the underlying stats for players, and I really do recommend that series that we've got going on right now. I believe it drops on a Wednesday. Tom does really good stuff on stats-based modules, so it's really good to check out. Rio saying Broja looks better, I agree. So I see Tom's answered that question there, so that's obviously really handy. The skip saying, should we sell Bowen? I think Bowen as a sell is definitely a consideration now. We know that West Ham haven't had any double game weeks announced. They only have really single game weeks along the way. So I think Bowen is one of those assets that I wouldn't rush to sell. But if you are looking to move to someone like a Saka or someone, I think that's justifiable now, which is crazy to think. But I think maybe the time could be up for West Ham assets if you really want to invest on the double game week picks. Notorious Nerd saying, how does Cornet compare to Weghorst? Very difficult for us to compare on that one, only because Cornet has played by 600 minutes more than Weghorst, but we know Cornet, when he does play, offers great attacking potential. But unfortunately, I just don't think I give you an accurate representation on those two compared to one another because of the limited minutes that Weghorst has played. FPL Phillips, thanks for tuning in, buddy. Hope you're doing well. And obviously, I'll keep an eye on Twitter for your plans, because always someone who I definitely check out for your plans. He always top manager. Yashwan's, apologies, is Watkins to Jimenez good move? Yes, I do think that is a solid move for the next 6 game weeks. Runak saying Dan James. I personally wouldn't consider Dan James. I think there's a lot better options out there. Veghorst, a good option if you are free hitting in game week 27. Also suggestions for a 7.1 million forward. If you're looking for a forward, I think Broja is still the man to go for sure. BJN saying, I'd rather sell Man City midfielders than Bowen. Yes, I think it's crazy to think because Man City are obviously such a top team, but I think selling the likes of Foden could come on the agenda now just because of their fixtures not having any doubles along the way. Ronak saying best out of Smith Rowe, Odegaard, Podence, Dan James. I would chuck Dan James straight out that equation right now, Ronak. I don't like any of those, unfortunately. I think Smith Rowe's a rotation risk. I think Odegaard doesn't offer much. Podence has potential, but we're not seeing it right now just because he's only been introduced back into the team. So of those, I think Podence has the bigger potential because of the doubles, but I just wouldn't touch any of those right now, personally. I think Rafinha is a much better pick if you could afford him. Combe saying Antonio out for Jimenez, or B, Antonio out for Jimenez and Calvert-Lewin out for Lacazette. I think you could probably just go for the Antonio to Jimenez move. I think that's probably better than going for the hit for the other move. I think we've got Andrew, thank you, buddy. Rio, thank you for tuning in. I think that's it, guys. I think we're going to wrap it up there. We've been going for just over an hour. Obviously, this is one of many live streams that are going to be coming along. We're going to be dropping live streams again for the game week 27 deadline, 28 deadline, 29 deadline. But importantly, we have videos dropping every day. So we have, of course, the algorithm squad that we do. We got Ross's videos where he does transfer tips. We got Tom's videos, which are looking at underlying stats for players. And of course, we have our live stream. So there's going to be so much information going along the way, guys. But this is going to be the last video ahead of the game week 26 deadline. So I hope it's provided some value. Again, you can rewind the video, check out all the topics that we've been covering. We've looked at Jota replacements, the algorithm team. We've looked at projected points, defenders, midfielders, forwards, Arsenal defenders, Wolves midfielders, the lot. So please do drop a like, guys, on your way out. Few people saying about Son for Fernandes for a -4. Don't mind it long term, but I think Fernandes could do well against this Leeds team because Leeds let runners through 24/7. We know that, and I think Fernandes could easily capitalise. So thank you very much for tuning in, guys. Dan, thank you for stepping in. And guys, if you need any more answers, please drop over to FPL Phillips's channel. I think Tom's just put his link in the chat. Please, I see over 200 of you on here. Please go straight over to FPL Phillips's live stream and get your questions answered over there because I need a drink because my throat is so dry. So thanks very much, guys. Head over to FPL Phillips's live stream for probably another hour of live stream chat, which is going to be very beneficial. So top man FPL Phillips. Thanks again, guys. Have a great game week. We'll talk very soon. Cheers.